Working on the T1 Ranger a little bit. The props come today for it, but I was working out how I'm going to hook this to the H743 wing. On the connectors for each wing, the center connector is the ailerons. As you can see there. And the aft one, or the rear one, is the tilt motor. So today, when the props arrive, I will replace the prop on this wing and just be waiting for the new tilt servo to arrive from China. So again, the three connectors in here, the center one is ailerons and the rear one is the tilt motor. So the front one is the ESC on that side, or the motor itself. The new props arrived, and there's that's the right wing. That is completely repaired and ready to go. I can't really do anything on the left wing until the tilt servo arrives from China. So let's look at what I'm doing inside the fuselage. Well, it's a rainy Sunday, and I think I'll work on this a little bit today. I hope my parts are going to come from China this coming week, and I can put this back into working order. But I've been having a little trouble with it. Let me show you what that is on the computer. And real quickly, I want to make one point, because I've seen some VTOLs recently, T1 Rangers set up with some modes that I think could get people in trouble. If you look at the flight modes section of the quad plane documentation in Ardu, if you go all the way to the bottom, flight modes to avoid, and the flight modes to avoid are acro, stabilized, and training. These modes are problematic. So please use fly-by-wire A mode instead of stabilized for manual flights. Now, I saw somebody recently, they had stabilized in their modes. I'm not trying to speak to that person. I'm not trying to correct them or anything. I'm just trying to point out to others some of the things I have seen. Also, one of my problems here is frame setup. Now, this is a tricopter type airplane. So we'll use a frame class 7 for tricopter. But here's the thing that bothers me. VTOL motor ordering. The motor order and output channel is the same as for copters. See copter motor layout. Except that the default output channels numbers usually start at 5 instead of 1. I'm going to be violating this sentence, but we'll get to that in a second. Since the basic plane control surfaces are usually set up by default already on outputs 1 through 4, then when you set Q enable to 1 and enable it, then you set up the quad plane portion. Now, one of the things that bothers me about this is if you look here and you go to tricopter, I don't understand this completely. I'm going to have to look at this much deeper, because this shows all the props running counterclockwise. Now, this does show an alternate setup with a
clockwise prop on motor 1, and the other 2 motors being counterclockwise. But this is all counterclockwise. Now, and they also number the motors 1, 2, and 4. What happened to 3? Anyway, this may be because it looks like they've got a 7 in here, which is a tilt servo. I don't know. I'm going to build it like it says right here with all counterclockwise props and see if it flies. I just really, that bothers me. Let's see, if the direction of the tail servo is going wrong, smooth raw, reverse the RC channels, or the tilt servo reverse parameter. Well, I don't really have a tilt servo in this. That's talking about one in the back. My motor's fixed in the back. Well, when you go over here to tricopter configuration, we got the same thing. But again, we've got this 7 in here and 7 in here. Still shows as frame class 7. Tail servo. There is no tail servo in mine. And they really don't talk about this well. So I'm just going to have to build it and see what happens. Let me show you the original setup on the T1 Ranger as it came in the door. So here's the way it came in the door, and I don't understand some of this. I do understand aileron, elevator, throttle, and rudder. That's the way a normal plane is set up. And they say to set a quad plane up as an airplane first, get all that done, and then come back and enable the Q plane perimeter, which opens up a bunch of new perimeters in the perimeter file, and then take care of them. So my first problem is rudder. I don't understand how the rudder works on the T1 Ranger. There is none. It could be a vectored thrust, differential thrust type of rudder with 2 motors, one on each wing, where the RPM on one motor's just increased with the with the rudder control. So that threw me immediately right away. The other thing that threw me immediately right away is they have a throttle here, which is fine for the airplane and an ESC, one motor, or even a quad with a vertical platform with 8 motors. There'd be 1 throttle channel. Well, if you look right here,
in the original flight controller, which was in the plane like this was connected to channel 3 throttle. Well, that confuses me because the DEC board, ESC, whatever's underneath this thing, what do they call it? The power management unit underneath is an unknown to me. I don't know what's going on there. Evidently, there's some signals coming back through this connector that are telling something inside this flight controller how the pulse width should be on the 3 tricopter motors to make it work correctly. I don't understand that, because according to the way it was wired, those 3 motors, as you can see, we'll go back over to the Ardu stuff there. They're hooked to different channels. So how this one throttle here makes changes to the other motors is a mystery to me. It's all done by magic inside this special purpose power management unit and flight controller.
And then we had this problem in the He-Wing documentation where this prop was counterclockwise. These two were this prop was counterclockwise, this was counterclockwise, and this one was clockwise. So counter, counter, and clockwise. That even bothered me more. So I've been smoking this over for the past week, trying to figure out how I was going to do this. I had decided I was just going to build it up like an airplane. Aileron, elevator, throttle, rudder. Again, don't know what to do about the rudder because don't know if it's how the rudder works. Differential thrust, what on this? So I was going to leave all this other alone. By the way, notice right here they have motor 7 tail tilt servo. There isn't one on that airplane. I don't know how He-Wing did this. It was just driving me absolutely crazy. So I was just going to build up the airplane as an airplane, leave the motors in the forward position, even throw it to launch it, land it like a normal airplane, and replace what broken props happened from landing it like that, because I don't think you'll ever blip the throttle enough to get both props fully horizontal at the same time. But aileron and the elevator and a throttle, those 3 channels were going to work well for me. Then once it worked like an airplane, I could come back, and I didn't have any problems putting the tilt motors on, starting on channel 5 and 6 like the documentation says. A little bit of strangeness here. Why don't you start with motor 1, 2, and then 4? And then again, why is there a 7 in this setup? So there was a lot of stuff in this original setup that just didn't match with Ardu planes. QQ plane setup didn't match with anything I could figure out in my head. But that's how I was going to attack it. Now, I did find out yesterday that He-Wing reached out and became a partner with Ardu Pilot, and now they're working together to straighten this He-Wing VTOL out, is what I've heard. And I'll show you where that information came from here in a moment. So with all those conflicting things and me not exactly sure how to set this up, yesterday a video came out on the internet which I think saved my whole life. And that was this video. It's Painless 360. I've been watching him for 10 years or more. I mean, it's one of the greatest resources on the planet. And he's got his Ranger or VTOL. He says the tuning is now perfected. That has to do with them getting in partnership with Ardu Pilot. And it only took 6 months. Well, I don't want to do 6 months on this airplane. So I started watching this video, and I will put a link to this video in the description. And I'm not sure I'm supposed to do this. Not sure I should do this without Painless 360's permission, but I'm going to play just a few seconds of this.
Hello and welcome to the video. It's another one of these. This gentleman is Andy. I'm sure if you've been watching the channel for...
And you can see not only is Painless 360 in this video, but Andy Piper is too. The gentleman on the right is the gentleman who back this winter I used his 7-inch videos and stuff to do my 7-inch, sorta. I went through his 7-inch setup and understood what he was doing, and then I kind of morphed it into my own to do my 7-inch. I did some things he said do. I did some things I felt my way was better, but the long and the short of it is Mr. Piper, I think that's how you pronounce his name. I sure hope so. I really trusted him. He also had a 5-inch build. I looked at his 5-inch build and I didn't want to use any of the parts he was using, so I didn't even really go through his 5-inch build videos or reference them in any way. When I built my 5-inch, I just basically did it all on my own. But this video is very, very interesting if you want to take the time to watch it, because they're talking about all sorts of problems with the T1 Ranger VTOL and how the partnership with the Ardu pilot is now getting it all fixed up, and Mr. Piper's just really doing a lot to get it going. And then right here, they also talk about they're going to do a build and show everybody how to properly set up one of these T1 VTOLs, but it's sort of going to be in the future, it looks like, because this video came out on the 16th, which, I think that was yesterday, I believe. Today's the 17th, so yeah, it came out yesterday. I watched it yesterday. Well, it seems Mr. Painless 360 is using a F405 VTOL flight controller from Maytech. I didn't even know they made a specific VTOL FC, but they do. And Mr. Piper is using an H743 wing, exactly like I put in mine. And they've got perimeter lists here. Mr. Piper's right here. So I downloaded this. And they talk in here how the ESCs that come in this airplane are not D-Shot compatible, but they're talking about updating the ESCs to Blue Jay, so they sort of are, but they're going to do that in the future. So I downloaded that perimeter list and dumped it into the flight controller and found this. This is the way Mr. Piper set up his. He's got motor 1, 2, 3, and 4 here. He's disabled the rudder, normal rudder channel. He's got his tilt motor front left and front right exactly how I wanted to do it. And he's got flaperon left and right here. He split the connector from ailerons and has two channels, one controlling the right and one controlling the left. And then he's got elevator here. So I sort of do understand this. He didn't put his motors, he didn't set up an airplane in the first 4. He didn't put his motors right here after, and he's got his elevator here where it's normally on 2. I understand this a whole lot more clearly than I understand He-wing setup, and technically than I understand the Ardu plane documentation. So for the first time in life, I'm going to take his perimeter file. I can't use his perimeter file directly. I mean, completely. First of all, I don't have D-Shot ESC in this. I haven't learned to upgrade it to whatever it was. They just said to upgrade it so that it can have those commands. So I'm going to have to take out his BD shot perimeters, which I know how to do now since I built the 7-inch and the 5-inch. Never had BD shot before I built the 7-inch. So that's not going to be too hard. I'm not going to split the connector on the ailerons. Maybe I will later and do this flapperon, because it'd be nice to have ailerons and flaps. I'm just going to probably, well, so as not to mess with his perimeters any more than I have to for the first time in life, I'm just going to disable that and make this one aileron. And I'm going to leave the elevator out here for kicks and grins. Probably have to put my modes on a channel I don't normally go as high as. But that's basically how I'm going to set mine up. Like I say, there's BRD. See, his board alternate config is 0 because he's not using CRSF. He's using S-Bus. So I'm going to have to change this to CRSF. I'm going to have to make this a 1. And then whatever whatever serial channel he's got his RC receiver on, I'm going to have to come into that channel and mark it as 23 RCN to make it work with CRSF. Little things like that, but I'm not going to change his perimeters wildly. Not going to do a lot of, and I'm going to do this. I've never used anybody's perimeter list before, ever. There's even some built into Ardu, as you can see here. Well, not for this, is there? Yeah. There is some in here, but not like I've seen. Maybe it's the quads. I see a lot of these in here, where this will help you. So I'm going to do that and fly it and see if it breaks again in lieu of time. I'm just not going to spend a lot of time on this. I think this could be a really good platform, and as they speak in that video, they do too. They just think E-Wing really has the perimeters, just especially the tuning. That's why the video says it only took Painless 360 6 months to get his right. Well, if it takes Painless 360 6 months to get his right, and I can get this right in less than 2 or 3 years, I'm happy, because if it took him 6 months, it should take me 6 years. That's the way I feel about it. So for the first time, I'm actually going to stand fully on Mr. Piper's shoulders with his perimeter list. I will go through it with a fine-tooth comb and see if there's any places I disagree with it. But if there's not, I'm not going to vary from his perimeter list. And I've never done that before. On my 7-inch build, I did go back to his perimeter list and look at what he did, and did adopt some of the things, especially in the notch filter area. He uses ESC telemetry notch filters. He even says in this video that that's the best way to do the notch filters. I'm doing them through the FFT type, which lets the plane kind of do them itself. The telemetry based, ESC telemetry based, does do it from the ESCs, and if the ESCs change, I'm sure it will change the value of the notch filters. The FFT mode of notch filters Also, I've seen mine varying around what frequency it thinks the problem is on the 5-inch while I've been flying it. When I come back and compare perimeters, I see that the center frequency for the noise moves around. So I don't think one is better than the other because they're both basically coming dynamically from, one's the ESC telemetry and the other one's the FFT. So after looking at his perimeters on those features, I did go with the same values as him because I understood what was going on now with notch filters with looking at his data. Gave me that understanding. I did use telemetry based, I think that's mode 3 on the notch filters for short. I did use the frequency values that he thought his frame was having problems with, so I did, for those 1 or 2 perimeters, use somebody else's stuff instead of my own. But again, on this one, I'm going to adopt the major portion of Mr. Piper's perimeters. I'll have to go in and look at where does he put where's he his flight mode channels on number 5. That's normally where I put mine. Wow, great minds think alike, right? Now we shouldn't confuse them with the outputs, because we can see certainly that channel 5 input may be modes, but channel 5 output right here is the front left motor tilt. So through today, I'm going to get everything on this airplane. I reprinted my 3D parts. Let me switch over to the camera.
So yesterday I reprinted my pan part that broke during the crash. I reprinted my VTX holder for the front that broke during the crash. And like I say, the parts from China hopefully will come this week, but I'm going to be prepared for them as soon as they come through the door. So it was just fortuitous, in my humble opinion, that Painless 360 put out that video yesterday. Because as you could see, I had a lot of questions. The more I delved into this, the more questions I generated that, boy, that's not what I've seen elsewhere. That's not what the He-Wing says. That's not this. That's not that. That's not the other. This did come with Ardu quad plane on it because at the time it was the only firmware that did VTOL. I understand that the recent version of iNav finally does VTOL. So hopefully I'll be playing with that in the future. But just wanted to put out this video. I'm going to go ahead and work on this today and set it up like I've showed you on Mr. Piper's perimeters. And then I will show you what I did during the next video when it's all together and ready to be made again. Because, you know, there's little stuff like the GPS that comes on this has this type of connector on it that will not plug down on the DuPont pins on the flight controller. I'm going to switch it out for the Flywoo GPS I have because the Flywoo GPS already has six of the pins wired up. When I was doing some testing recently, these two that aren't connected are the I2C data and clock. I had them disconnected because I just wanted to use the 4 for ground voltage, transmit and receive on a UART. But this will go perfectly in the back. This is an M10 GPS. Utilizing it real quick after I bought it. That's I'm happy about that. So all that building I will show in the next video. And I'll go ahead and close this one out for now and get started on all of that. And if there's any strangeness goes on, I will do a supplementary video. All right, guys, thank you so much.